Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. I am Billy Embody. Thank you for listening. What a busy first 24 hours with the transfer portal window opening. It has been. SMU football's already gained a commitment for its roster in the class of this transfer portal wave, and we'll touch on that. A Dallas native returning to the Lone Star State to finish out his college career. Also, Rhett Lashley and his staff have extended a few offers. We'll touch on those. We'll also tease a little bit of who SMU is pushing for in the transfer portal. Some big names that are out there that SMU is in good position early on, some public, some not so public. We're going to touch on all of that. And I want to lead off with news that West Virginia cornerback Charles Woods is transferring to SMU for his final year of college eligibility. The Dallas Kimball product was a one-time SMU commit before ending up at West Virginia. That was the transfer portal class that brought Jahari Rogers into the fold for the SMU secondary. That was when Charles Woods decided to go elsewhere. He ended up going to West Virginia where, look, he had some bright spots. He had some not so bright spots. He missed a lot of the 2022 season with an ankle injury that hampered him and caused him to shut it down after 4 games to preserve this final season of eligibility. He played for 2 seasons with the Mountaineers. He entered this season as a first-team All-Big 12 preseason pick, and he was tops on Pro Football Focus's list of, I believe it was something like pass completion percentage, so one of the best corners in the Big 12 in that respect from the 2021 season. Played in 11 games, 36 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 2 picks, one of which, as Joe Hoyt tweeted out on Monday night, was against Max Duggan, 2 fumble recoveries, and 6 pass breakups. This is somebody that I think when you look at what SMU needed, they needed to bring in a veteran at the position who's got size at 6'1". He's already played a ton of football. He played at Illinois State, so he's got ties to Keenan Hall as well there. Ricky Hundley did some good work on this front as well. So a target right from the get-go. He entered as a transfer, a graduate transfer. And look, we reported on the Pony Express that SMU was going to push. I put my On3 recruiting prediction machine pick in for the Mustangs. And quickly thereafter, he jumped on board with this 2023 class. I believe he'll be here in January, so that'll be a big plus. I'm not so sure on that. I've reached out to Charles to talk with him a little bit more about his decision, but he is on board for SMU in the secondary now in 2023. This is really important with Armani Johnson using up the rest of his eligibility. We'll see if anybody else goes elsewhere. But look, this is a secondary that needed help, and you get somebody who's got talent. And, as long as he stays healthy, and people, noted that on our message board, last year was the first year that he really had any, injury bug. He had an ankle injury. He ended up sitting out the rest of the year. And so now he's going to be healthy and ready to go, but he doesn't have any sort of, history of having injuries. So if he could stay healthy, that'll be huge for SMU. They are going after more defensive backs in the secondary. We've touched on a lot of different names in the past coming from the JUCO ranks, guys like Bishop Fitzgerald, Matthew Littlejohn, Ben Osuki, who is supposed to take an official visit this month to SMU. He was on campus for the Memphis game. And also they're trying to line up those visits with Bishop Fitzgerald and Matthew Littlejohn, and we'll have updates on those guys as we get them. But one name that has become public, another one-time SMU commit, Jonathan McGill, Stanford defensive back. He was a captain for the Cardinal this past year. With the news that David Shaw is now out as Stanford coach, he is looking to play his final 2 seasons of eligibility elsewhere. And there are a lot of people in SMU's corner on this one. I'll say that. He's expected to take an official visit to SMU this weekend, where Craig Niver and that staff will look to lock him down. I know Baylor is pushing hard for Jonathan McGill to try to change things, which is worth noting. I do feel like as he enters the portal, SMU sits in a good spot, and we'll see how the visit goes this weekend. But you've got to like where SMU stands early on here for Jonathan McGill. Again, a guy that can come back home, played his high school ball at Coppell, was one of the top prospects in the area and just a playmaker all over the place. So an undersized guy at 5'9", but he could really factor in right away in SMU's defense if he were to end up with the Mustangs. And has put out some of his tape on his Twitter, and you've got to like his playmaking ability, a knack for being around the football, and just a great person in general. I really enjoyed covering Jonathan McGill as a high school recruit. SMU was in his final schools. Stanford came in late and ended up getting him. We know if you were back with us at that point at 24/7, covered that. It was tough. He was an SMU commit, and Stanford comes in late and is ended up getting him on board. In that recruiting class. He ended up having a great career for Stanford. I mean, he really did. And I think this is somebody that if SMU can get on board, you're looking at this secondary pretty differently in a way. You have Brandon Crosley who could come back, Brian Massey who could come back. Those are two guys you're going to look for a step in the right direction as far as improvement, especially Brian Massey. We saw Ahmad Moses start the last game of the season for SMU against Memphis, and his future looks really bright. SMU is also after Adrian Wilson, the Colorado commit, who was on campus for an official visit this past weekend. So I'm really interested to see how they can continue to revamp this secondary. I think a good mix of transfer, JUCO, and adding a guy like Adrian Wilson late in the process would be a great haul for SMU. And I don't think they'll be done. I think they'll continue to address that position, especially the cornerback room. You have added now Charles Woods. You want to add another guy who could come in and compete right away for a starting job. If you're Charles Woods, you're looking at this as a 1-year showcase for the NFL. If he can put together a really solid season, that'll help his draft stock, which was high going into 2022 before the season. So with Jonathan McGill, he's kind of in the same boat, has 2 years, would be looking to get a really nice degree from SMU if he ended up at SMU, and then, try his talents at the NFL. He's obviously an undersized guy, so he'll have that, kind of being held against him, but he'll be back with his trainer back home who can, work with him a little bit more throughout not only the offseason, but, just during the season with tune-ups and things like that too. A lot of these guys have those type of trainers around, and especially in the DFW area, they're plentiful. So he'll look to come back home is kind of what it seems like right now between Baylor and SMU. I know TCU's kind of poking around there. It'll be really interesting to see how things go with Jonathan McGill, because SMU sat in a really good spot when he entered the portal, and I haven't heard anything to change my opinion of that. Now, another one is Joe Hoyt reported. We were trying to hold this one until he was on campus this weekend, but Stanford offensive lineman and teammate with Jonathan McGill, Drake Metcalf, entered the transfer portal as a graduate transfer after the news that David Shaw was out, played in all 12 games for the Cardinal, and started against Notre Dame this year. He is somebody that, came out in the 2020 cycle out of St. John Bosco, which is where SMU wide receiver Jake Bailey went to high school. So he's got that free COVID year that he has taken off, and then played this season. Obviously, played in all the games, or played in 11 games for the Cardinal, or all 12 games. Sorry, and started for the Cardinal. Sorry, I'm just kind of looking through the notes I have on him. He played in all 12 games as a sophomore in 2021, and then started this season against Notre Dame. So I would believe he would have 3 years of eligibility remaining if that's the case. That would be somebody that you could circle, as a plug and play transfer if you're Garen Justice looking for help in that regard. He played center, which is, a position that I think could use a look. He's played guard. He's very versatile in that respect along the interior. So it would be really, really key for SMU if they were able to get him on board as well. He's somebody that he'll have 3 years of eligibility remaining, which is important. You get a multi-year guy if you can get him on board. And if you can get Jonathan McGill on board, you've got to feel good about your chances with Drake Metcalf, especially considering Jake Bailey's there as well. So SMU is going to bring at least those two guys in for official visits this weekend. We're also going to drop news today at ontheponyexpress.com that they're adding another official visitor this weekend. confirmed with him that he is coming to town to check out Dallas at a position of need. So be sure to subscribe to ontheponyexpress.com. Take a 7-day free trial. Check it out. We posted 7 transfer stories alone yesterday, and also news on high school prospects is flowing on the board, where the coaching staff is out at recruiting guys, both from the high school, JUCO, and transfer rankings. So be sure to check out the site if you haven't already. And we still have free Founders Club hats available for you guys if you guys subscribe. So check that out. Those are 2 that we're going to be watching really closely this weekend. SMU is really going full bore on this transfer portal front as they are trying to rebuild this roster, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Really, you see Drake Metcalf, an offensive lineman, they're kicking around some other positions that need to be upgraded. So again, we dropped some notes. I mean, a trio of former 4-star prospects that you guys are going to want to check out. Those are for our subscribers, and we're kind of updating those with notes as we get them on those players. So be sure to check that out. A few offers that we can talk about on the podcast today for SMU. They offered one early morning, late morning. Joshua Eaton, a Houston native who announced he's transferring from Oklahoma. He entered the portal. SMU offered him right away. He played in 4 games for the Sooners in 2022. He has 3 years of eligibility remaining. We talked about trying to upgrade this secondary. He's another one that could help in that regard. In 2020, he played in 5 games, making 4 tackles. In 2021, he played in 10, making 3 tackles. He hadn't really necessarily clicked getting into a starting role with Oklahoma. And say what you want about defense at Oklahoma from time to time. It can be tough, of course, to break through. But 3 years of eligibility remaining, that's a positive when you look at Joshua Eaton. And again, he has size. And I think that's something that when we've kind of followed the transfer additions over the course of the last couple of years, I think from time to time that's been missing in the secondary. They've gotten a guy like a Sam Westfall. They've gotten a guy like Jahari Rogers, but that big corner until this past offseason with Kavaris Hall, who was kind of nicked up here and there, didn't break through that they had hoped, I think he would, during his first year at SMU. They need more size. They need guys that can be physical and really match up against some of these good wide receivers in the league. So Joshua Eaton was a big offer that went out. Another former 4-star prospect that got an offer was Texas A&M edge transfer Chinmai Zadeli. He's a former Katy Tompkins. Katy Tompkins standout. He was a top 50 overall prospect in the country. He was a part of a really talented defensive line at Texas A&M. They signed the best defensive line class, honestly, in history of recruiting in the modern era. Last year, he was a starter right off the bat, played in 2 games, got hurt. He had 7 tackles and 4 pressures on the quarterback in those 2 games. When he returned from injury, he had kind of been passed up. So that was kind of a tough deal. I believe he was hurt as a freshman, didn't play in any games at all. So he is somebody that would have, again, 3 years of eligibility remaining. Calvin Thibodeau recruited him at Oklahoma. Really talented player who could kind of be versatile along the defensive line. I think I could see him fitting in more of that maybe Devere Levelston type role. They're still recruiting, guys in the middle to stack that position up. They probably have 4 offers out. Another one that went out, and I think we talked about it on last week's podcast, but Anthony Goodlow, 6'4", 286-pound defensive lineman out of Tulsa. He started 3 years for the Golden Hurricane. He redshirted in 2018. He played in 12 games in 2019. He had his free year in 2020 when he had 5 starts. In 2021, he also had 5 starts. So I'm looking at it like he's going to have 1 year of eligibility remaining. He played in 2022 and really had a terrific year. 44 tackles, 8 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. And again, is a part of a culture that, plays really hard defensively. So you want to bring in a guy like that as well. So he's out of Del City, Oklahoma. I do know Calvin Thibodeau's familiar with him. So that is another one that they offered last week. They also offered Andre Carter, and no, not the former LSU defensive lineman or the LSU defensive line coach or Miami defensive lineman that I covered in the past year. But Andre Carter entered the transfer portal, and he is somebody that would add a major boost in size in the middle. Had 70 tackles, 13 of which went for loss, 7 sacks, an interception, 11 quarterback hurries in 2022. He's been productive throughout his whole career up there at Western Michigan. And, I think you look at somebody like that, and I think SMU is going to have some serious competition to land him. But they did extend the offer. He picked up a few on Monday as he entered the portal. Looking at him, I believe he's going to be somebody that has 1 year remaining. He started his college career all the way back in 2018. So they are looking for immediate help. I do know one of the goals of the staff when it comes to some of these transfer targets, especially on defense, is they really want them to be veterans. They need that boost. They're losing Jimmy Phillips. They lost Junior Aho. You don't know what you have with Stephon Wright. You lose Armani Johnson. You lose Nick Roberts. You lose some guys that contributed to SMU and were certainly at the very least rotation, as well as some starters. And you've got to get older on this defense because it needs a quick fix. They do have some guys coming up in this class that they really like. You look at Damian Wimberly. You look at Brandon Maizano. There are others in this class, Alex Kilgore, that they really like. But those guys are going to need time to develop. Some of the younger guys that they took in the portal, like a Cam Farrar, Jaquandis Burns, you don't know if they're going to take that next step. They're going to have to go and find a lot of veterans. That's why they're going JUCO. That's why they're going transfer. They're looking around for some best available. We talked about Adrian Wilson, the Colorado commit, as well as Kevin Allen, 2023 defensive lineman, as kind of the couple high school prospects that are on the board. I would imagine with some of the coaching turnover, they're also looking at some guys that may have been committed elsewhere, kick the tires on those and see if they can't get them. And I'll say this as I kind of transition, because I think I've kind of run down pretty much all the happenings from Monday that we can really talk about. We spoke with Rhett Lashley yesterday on his New Mexico Bowl conference call, and SMU got a practice in over the weekend. They might have gotten 2, but they definitely got 1 practice in, and they are going to kind of take it slow this week as far as practice. It sounds like the guys are working out and focused on finals. Then they'll get back into it on Friday because the staff will be back for official visits this weekend. So they're going to get back into it on Friday and start preparing for the New Mexico Bowl against BYU. BYU loses its defensive coordinator. They parted ways, I believe it was. I'm not sure if he got fired or left, but they've also had a couple guys go into the portal. One of their top tight ends went in the portal. So they're kind of a group that's in flux. SMU will kind of close. We'll talk about some of the departures via the transfer portal for SMU as well to kind of round that all off. We did get one that we found that entered the portal on Tuesday morning, which wasn't too surprising. But as far as the BYU preparations go, it's a hard line to walk, guys. I mean, you're looking at losing an entire official visit weekend for SMU because they're playing in this New Mexico Bowl, which is December 17th. The transfers couldn't go and take visits until the 8th. So it is compact into a window that they are having to get creative, and they're having to prioritize transfer recruiting. I mean, it's just the reality of it. BYU doesn't take many transfers. So I know somebody posted that they've been practicing and trying to take advantage of as many practices as you can get. But, on the flip side, SMU's dinged up. They didn't have Kamar Wheaton, Tanner Mordecai, played through broken ribs, Rashee Rice, broken toe. There are some guys that are trying to get healthy. They're also trying to focus on finals. They're doing exit meetings with these guys as well. So it is a tough line to walk. I don't think that, 3 extra practices, let's just say, is going to change how this team shows up to the New Mexico Bowl. And I'm sorry if you think that 3 practices are going to change it. If they were practicing this week as we're recording this podcast, I just don't think so. They're treating it like we have an extended week to prepare for BYU. The coaches have looked at BYU. They're looking at it while they're on the road recruiting. They've got the iPads. They're doing their game planning while they're logging those miles on the recruiting trail. I know some of the staff is out of the state right now recruiting transfers because you can't sacrifice this time to get 3 extra practices in. You just can't do it when you're SMU. So we'll see. It is all about approaching it with the mindset of let's go win the game. I don't think 3 extra practices are going to change whether SMU catches the football, whether they learn to tackle. And you're also seeing a group that is going to get a lot of work in over these practices because we've already seen, as we'll run down, there are at least, I want to say 5 guys who have transferred out already, probably more. And we'll kind of run down those names here at the end. But SMU lost some depth. So they're going to get some of these guys extra work over the course of these practices. We know there are guys that got hurt as well, and are out for the rest of the season. Ben Redding, Terrence Newman, they can't play. So SMU is prioritizing the transfer portal. They have to go recruit these guys, recruit their families, recruit their high school coaches, talk to college coaches that have coached them and build that rapport to get these guys done for the class of 2023 and the 2023 season and beyond. So it is a absolute sprint. It's brutal. If you're SMU, you wish you were playing in like the Gasparilla Bowl on December 23rd. You could have had that second official visit weekend with transfers and even some of these high school and JUCO guys and been able to, go for it. But reality is, they don't have that. So they're 11 days away from playing the game right now. They're going to get back to it and kind of go with it as, okay, we've got an extended week to kind of get back to the basics, work these guys in. They'll go to the bowl site on Wednesday. So they'll practice here in Dallas and then go there on Wednesday. Then they'll have another practice and then a walkthrough. And then you play the game, which has been flexed to the evening as well. So it's just a hard time of the year. There's probably, if you're looking for, if I think they're approaching this the wrong way, I don't. I've always said that bowl games are about which team shows up with the right mindset. I don't think giving your guys finals week, I don't think giving your staff time to recruit and go in home with commits and go in home with transfers and JUCO targets is a bad thing relative to preparing those extra couple days. Because otherwise, the transfer portal literally opened on Monday. So they have a week and 2 days to do all their transfer recruiting, basically, because I'm pretty sure it goes dead, just like it goes dead for the high school prospects on Sunday. So it goes dead on Sunday, December 18th for the high school prospects, and I believe it goes dead for transfers and JUCO guys too. So it's a sprint to the finish. It's a hard line to walk, and we'll see. It's all about mindset and extra days of practice. Taking 2 full weeks to practice isn't going to change whether or not this team shows up. I'm not saying they are going to show up. I'm not saying they're not going to be ready to go either. It's just a mindset thing. And so going to New Mexico, playing a BYU team that's a really tough opponent, that should be the focus. And when those guys get back to work and really start game planning, that should be what the focus is. And it doesn't matter if you take all 15 practices or if you take 10. So with that, we're going to run down the transfer portal guys that SMU lost. TJ McDaniel was the one on Tuesday morning that entered as of the time of me recording this podcast. I'll check it one more time before we get off the pod. But look, TJ, just what a tough, kind of career he had. He broke out as a freshman, looked really promising as the third leading rusher in that 2019 season. That 2020 season, he was doing well. And he had that awful leg injury, cost him the entire 2021 season. He comes back, has some success here or there, but ends up, finishing, I believe, about 250 yards rushing this season, playing a backup role behind Trey Siggers at times, Velton Gardner at times, Kamar Wheaton at times, certainly Tyler Levine late in the season. So I think he saw the writing on the wall. Time for a fresh start. Rhett Lasher is somebody who recruited him to SMU when he was here the first time. So you would have thought if he was in the plans long term, SMU would have really prioritized him getting the ball. I don't think he was ever really the same. You saw some flashes here or there, but nothing to really say he was going to overtake a Tyler Levine next year, a Kamar Wheaton next year, Velton Gardner next year, as long as he gets healthy and in shape. And both of those guys with Kamar and Velton. But then you're going to try to bring in another running back here. And it wouldn't shock me either if they find a way to, get a running back in the port or in the high school ranks. Again, one of those guys that is committed elsewhere, doesn't like the direction of the staff, and is looking around. So we'll see what happens as they address that position. But TJ McDaniel is one that entered the portal. Tyler Levine is coming back for another season. For those who are wondering, he didn't end up walking for senior day. So I think that kind of slammed the door shut on TJ's kind of future. One name that we dropped as well early on theponyexpress.com was Travion Sneed. Entered the portal, played in 3 games this past year, or as a freshman, and then played in 6 in 2022, made 1 tackle. He was somebody in camp that honestly looked like he was kind of on the up, that he was going to carve out a role as an edge rusher. He was getting after it. But I think as guys like Isaiah Smith and Jalen Samuels was certainly out for a bit in fall camp, Jaden Jones and those guys kind of turned the corner, and Nelson Paul, we saw Travion Sneed, just end up getting relegated to a backup role. And so all the best to him. I loved Travion Sneed as a high school player, played both sides for Mineola, but his size, and ending up at defensive end, it just probably seemed like he was going to eventually, move on to another stop. And so he went public with that on Monday morning, entering the portal. Darren Brown, I didn't see him walk on senior day, but he has 1 year of eligibility remaining. So I always felt like he was going to drop down, maybe find another place to go. He played a lot down the stretch, actually, for SMU, especially once Terrence Newman went out with the injury. I think around the USF game, he really started playing a lot. 8 tackles in 26 games. He was here a long, long time, but he was part of, I believe, the first Sonny Dykes recruiting class. So Darren is a great guy, always liked. So best of luck to him. Another one that was always liked, but just never put it together. Calvin Wiggins walked on senior day, had 1 catch, 13 yards, played in 18 games. He had a couple key drops that really ended up killing his opportunity to play. He looked the part. They tried moving him around, and it just never came together. He was a key special teamer for SMU this year. So best of luck to Calvin Wiggins. He's on the move. Chase Cromartie went public with what we reported that he was on the move. And Jaden Lawton, cornerback, who left the team early this year as a true freshman, is on the move as well. So that makes it and then one more, Trey Fight, never played in a game for SMU. He was a 3-star out of Tatum. Again, I think a deep defensive end, edge rusher spot probably caused him to move on. He just, I didn't really ever hear too much about him making a move. So best of luck to Trey. I know him and his dad and Cullen really well. His brother, who's a commit, or who's a 2023 prospect right now, who just decommitted from Arizona State. Best of luck to him. Always a good one. And remember jumping on the phone with him. I'd actually been out and about with some friends, and so talked with Cullen, talked with Trey and his dad, and all that when he was ready to make his commitment to SMU. So best of luck to Trey, who makes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 players who have entered the transfer portal officially for SMU. So we will be tracking that. There will be more. Again, Monday was the first day they could enter the portal. I'm interested to see which guys maybe, there's a 45-day window that you can enter the transfer portal. And I'm not sure how it works on the back end of things, but there could be some that end up getting to that second semester and entering then. I don't know if the days work out with that. I know the staff is working through a lot of that. There are some players that, can graduate in the spring and move on. Darren Brown, for example, graduated last May. So some of that is probably a little bit of finagling with, all right, well, let's get this kid his degree and allow him to do that, because we'll have spots at the mid-year to allow him to do that. And it helps with APR and things like that too. So we'll kind of monitor that. There are some names that I think make a lot of sense that'll move on. And we've seen that so far. All the guys that SMU's lost make a lot of sense. TJ's the only one that you kind of thought, okay, well, maybe he would come back. and give it another go. But he's been here a long time already. So best of luck to TJ and the rest of the guys as they move forward with their careers elsewhere. SMU is still churning up, ripping up the road, looking for transfers. We'll have you guys all covered on that at ontheponyexpress.com. So be sure to grab a subscription and check us out. Appreciate all you guys who have subscribed to On the Pony Express's YouTube channel as well. That continues to grow. So please check that out. I will be out this weekend watching more high school football as well as covering SMU's basketball game against TCU. The Mustangs do play Wednesday night against Arizona State. And after that abysmal game against Jackson State, I think that could be a rough one for the Mustangs in Moody on Wednesday night. But we'll have your coverage of that one as well. We will also kind of do a wrap up on the kind of high school recruiting and where things stand with that entire class. We'll do that later this week on another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. But hope you guys enjoyed this one. Lots to cover. Check out the site for more names to know in the transfer portal, as well as names you can kind of rule out. If you see one that makes sense, maybe you want to know, hey, do you think SMU is going to go after them? Swing by the site, grab a subscription and ask me, and I'll get you an answer. So with that, guys, hope you guys enjoyed this edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. I will catch you guys later this week with another edition. So thanks for listening and have a good one.